Okay, I had some people ask for a homework walkthrough for this kind of phone animation. We have some people taking it online too, so I thought that might be helpful of kind of some of the elements that would get added in here. So this is all going to be shape layers with a little bit of a text layer. So let's get started. I'm just going to do this by memory, so it's not going to match our homework exactly because I want your guys' phones to be, what your phone looks like. So it shouldn't match the homework example exactly. It should look like yours. But I'm just gonna go by memory. I don't have my phone out, but we'll just get creative. So I'm gonna do a new shape layer, and that just gives me a blank shape layer. I'm gonna rename this phone base, and I'm going to add a rectangle and a fill. So everything's gonna be black and white on this. So looks like, oh god, it's one of those things where my boxes start way off screen. Okay, so it's going to be a white filled rectangle, and everything's going to happen. All the size changes on here aren't going to be scale changes on the base or on the transform properties. Like we're not going to be animating this stuff. We'll probably be moving and maybe rotating, but all the size changes are going to be here within our rectangle path size. And to animate our X and Y separately, we want to uncheck this constrain proportions box. So let's check that. That way we can move this independently, our X and our Y independently. I'm going to turn on motion blur and on the layer just as we go. And I'm going to kind of create the size shape of a phone. Again, I'm not going to be perfect. If you want to look up your phone and get measurements or whatever, feel free. I'm not going to stop you. So that looks to be about the shape of a phone. I'm going to add some roundness to the edges. It's a very slight roundness. That looks to be about right. Okay. I'm going to Control D. I'm going to select my phone base, hit Control D or Apple D if you're on an Apple to duplicate it. And I'm going to rename this one Screen. And I'm going to hit UU to bring up everything that I've changed in my layer so I can get to my size quickly. And I'm going to bring this in because this is going to be my screen size here. I'm going to change it to black. Okay. Bring this up a little. Kind of, I don't. This might actually be a little bit longer. Just kind of shifting this up and down and kind of getting my shape right. My display is probably too round. I need to bring this a little bit farther down. I'm going to make this like 5. Displays aren't very rounded, so just a tad bit. Actually, maybe like 8. There we go. And we might be able to pump up the roundness of the base a little bit, so maybe like 32. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so we've got our our main 2 pieces. Okay, so let's focus on getting this animated in. We talked a little bit about in class parenting. Parenting essentially attaches one layer to another. So if we parent our phone screen to our phone base, when we move our base, our screen will go along with it. And the way we do that is you can take this pick whip right here is what it's called. Click and hold, and you can select phone base here. And it says over here, hold shift to move layer to location of parent, hold alt to retain child, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so essentially you just click and drag and you can select the layer you want it to parent. When it does that, you can see that it parents it right here. Alternatively, you can just select this and then select phone base here. Now, if we move this base, and parenting only really affects transform properties. So and most specifically the position, scale, and rotation of a transform property. So if we rotate this, check it out, cool, everything rotates, right? When as before, if this wasn't parented and we rotated it, our screen would stay there. So good to know. So we want to parent, at least for this first big rotation, parent these items. So how we're going to animate this on is animate our rectangle path size. This is what we're going to be animating to kind of have it transform in. So let's check our keyframe here for size. We're going to do the same thing for our screen. Boom, got them. And then I'm going to hit U on both layers just to bring up size so we can get rid of everything else. So now we're just focused on size. I'm going to go ahead. I know this is going to be my endpoint, so I'm going to create new keyframes at the end here, and we're going to kind of animate backwards. So let's go back a little bit, and let's bring my size, my Y down. Right. We're going to bring my Y down because I want the end to kind of shoot up like that. And it kind of gets off with my screen. Let's kind of hide the screen for now. I just want to focus on the base. So I want that to jut out like that, and then I want it to start. I'm going to delete this. I want it to start coming in this way, right? So we may, and then at the very beginning, all zeroed out. So we're kind of going to do it in sections. So it ends here. The stage before this, it shrinks down the Y. So if we look at our values over here, our Y is going from 878 to 8 pixels. Our X didn't change, so it's going to jut out. And then from there, we want it to shrink in, so our X is going to come in now. Here, right? Then it animates in. So from this point, then I zeroed it out just a little bit before, okay? So this is what it looks like. I'm not going to play through it real time, but those are our kind of sections of animation. So let's animate our screen with it. I'm going to kick our screen back on. And let's do this. I think if we see, the problem is that I don't want that to happen. So I want to change on this. I need to bring this down to, let's just do 0. And let's set this, let's let this transition happen for a little bit before the screen starts. See, so it kind of grows in through there. So maybe like halfway through. Okay. And honestly, we could probably do where from before here, like maybe this is at like 4, or we could do 8 just to make sure it's the same. From here to here, we could have it go into 0. So we could, let's see if it juts out. We're kind of going to do a little micro move here. See if that looks weird. So as it's going up there, it juts out and then up. See, it's kind of weird with that. I don't like that though. All right, let's not do that. That looks ugly. So we'll have this start completely flat on the Y. We'll just have it start right in the middle. Okay, cool. Okay, so we have our kind of our basic how we want this to happen. Let's add in our rotation. Before we do that, let's slide all this stuff over to the front. So it's right at the front part of this. I'm going to bring this guy over so we can watch it real time. Okay, looks good. Let's add our easy ease. These keyframes by default, we talked about this a little bit in class. These diamond keyframes are just basic linear keyframes. So a movement between these is going to look just like a straight line, essentially. So you can see it's just a linear line, just boring linear line. If you want it to kind of ramp up the movement so it starts a little slow and it takes a little bit before it kind of ramps up its speed, we can select all of our keyframes here. And if you hit Function F9 on a Mac, mine is just F9 on a PC, or you can right click Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. It turns them into these hourglass keyframes. These are called Easy Ease keyframes. And if we look at just the graph of what this looks like, now you can see it takes a little bit to ramp the speed up, and it takes a little while to slow down at the top there. So now this is what our Easy Ease keyframes looks like. Okay, so maybe slow this down just a little bit. Okay, cool, looks good. So now let's add a rotation. When it gets to this point to here, we want it to rotate once. So let's go to that point. My screen is parented to my base, so I just need to rotate my base. So if I click on my base, hit R to bring up rotation, create a keyframe here, create a keyframe at my end. I want it to end at 0, so I just need to animate backwards. So we'll set this to negative 180. Oops, to 180. And it'll go from negative 180 and animate into 0 here. Okay? So let's see what that, and let's easy ease that as well. Let's see what that looks like. Cool. Nice, I like it. Looks good. Okay, so from this point, I think we're going to animate on the rest of the pieces of our phone. So we got the hard stuff done, all the movements done. All the hard movement, at least, right? Cool, like it. Let's animate our pieces, so like our buttons and stuff like that. So let's do a new, I'm just going to create this by scratch. I'm not really going to look off of anything. New shape, I'm going to add the motion blur from the beginning. I'm going to call this home button. We're going to do an ellipse with a stroke, and that stroke is going to be black. And I'm just going to drag this down and do a stroke width of like 3. Okay, looks good. And let's scroll to where after our rotation, and let's bring the start of this to that point. Right, we're about to the point where we want it to animate in. And let's animate this in using trim paths. So we'll add trim paths, and we'll animate the end of this. So we're going to go from 0 to 100. It's going to be our move. So we'll keyframe here. We'll go ahead, maybe 30 keyframes. Create another keyframe there, and we want to start this at 0. So if we can kind of see what this is going to do, right? Okay, cool. Let's do the same thing again. Let's just duplicate our home button. We'll do home button 2. And let's do a filled in circle, maybe. So let's not do the trim paths on this one, so let's delete that. Let's not do a stroke, let's delete that. Let's do a fill, like a black fill. And let's scale it, or let's bring our size down. Okay, that looks cool. Maybe a little smaller. Sure, and let's have this scale in. So we can use just our transform property scale, that'd be fine. If we wanted, we could also use the size of the path. We could animate this in. You know, it's not really gonna matter because it's just gonna scale in from 0. So just to be easy, I'll just do scale. So scale, let's take maybe 20 keyframes, scale that into 100. So 100% at the ending point, starting percent 0. And maybe we'll do one of those things where, oh, by the way, let's go to our home button here. Let's make sure we easy ease these keyframes. Easy ease these keyframes as well. So these should come in like that. Cool. Let's do one of those things where it maybe over comes in. So it maybe goes, instead of 100%, maybe this goes to like 120. And then 10 keyframes later, it comes back down to 100. So it kind of animates past its point and then scales down, right? So if we focus just on this point, let me bring my work area over. I'm going to animate this up even higher. So like, let's do that. Let's make it really obvious. Okay, cool. Why not? Looks good. Okay, so we got our home button done. Now let's make some stuff up here and some like volume stuff. Let's do a new shape layer. We'll do our volume buttons. Let's do a ellipse. Oh no, not an ellipse. Let's do a rectangle. Let's uncheck our size button so we can make this kind of tall and skinny. And let's give it a fill where it's white. And let's bring this up this side here. I'm going to zoom in so we can kind of see. what this is going to look like. I want to add some roundness. So it's not just straight edges. It's kind of hard to see. Yeah, that kind of works. I'll bring it in a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so we just want this to slide in from here to here, right? So that looks good. Let's maybe bring the Y down a little bit so it's not so tall. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so let's rename this to volume up, and let's bring this over to the part where these are going to start coming in. And let's animate this guy in. So it's going to do a position move, right? It's going to be end up here. So let's go ahead like 20 keyframes. We'll duplicate the keyframe there because this is our ending point. We'll go animate backwards like we do and slide this in. And let's easy ease those. Okay, so it looks like that. Cool, maybe a little bit faster. Cool, so let's duplicate it. Volume up 2 is what it already names it as. And let's just slide this down. So there's 2 of them. But if we do that, if we want to slide this down, it's only going to change this one. So our first keyframe is going to stay up there. So you can see that see these dotted lines it creates? You can see that our first keyframe is still right here. So to move both of them, I can click and drag and select both keyframes. As long as my cursor is right on top of one of them. Now if I click and drag, you can see it doesn't do that. Now both of these keyframes are moving that Y down. Okay, so now they should both come up like that, which is nice. I might offset these a little bit too, right? Just offset them a few keyframes so they kind of do one of these things, right? They pop in a little bit separately. See that? Maybe even a little bit more. Cool. Like it. Let's duplicate it again. And let's do this as like a power button. Power button. Oops, as I messed up where that is. Power button. Okay. And let's just slide this guy over to the other side. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to snap my scrub tool to be right on top of here, select both of these keyframes, and move this guy onto this side. Okay. I'm going to click it, hit UU, and I'm going to change the size to be much taller. And I'm going to move my position on it again. As if that's like the size of a button. That's like a huge giant button. But you know what? In my phone, that's what it looks like. Okay, so let me bring this up. I'm going to offset this one too, just a little bit. That's kind of one key when you're doing kind of these sequential things where a lot is happening. Rather than have it all start at the same exact time, it's nice to kind of offset them. It's called a sequential animation. So you kind of have piece by piece happening all kind of one after another. When it's super uniform, you kind of lose some of the detail in what's happening. But when it's sequential like that, it kind of looks nice. So, oops, sorry. Okay, so we got a power button. We got 2 volume buttons. We got a home button down here. Let's do some weird camera stuff and speaker stuff up here, okay? Let's do a new shape layer. We'll make it a rectangle. We'll give it a fill. Our fill will be black. Okay, our path, we're going to uncheck this so we can change the size separately. And let's bring this up here to kind of line this up with what our speaker bar would be like. Let's give it some roundness. Okay, that looks like a speaker bar, right? Looks pretty legit. Okay, so let's animate this part in. So let's bring this over. You can either click and drag it over because this is the spot where our sequential pieces are animating in. You can either click and drag this over, or if you hit left bracket, it'll snap it to wherever your cursor is. Okay, so now we need to animate this part in. Rather than I mean, the layer, you could animate it in right here, but I always like to have the layer starting at wherever you're going to animate it in. That way we know there's nothing happening here. And it's not, because if you animate it in over here and you don't have the drop down to see the keyframes, you have no idea when things are starting or stopping. So always like to bring the whole layer over and start from there. So, okay, so let's do our animate our size. We know this is where we're going to end. We'll go to forward like 20 keyframes. We'll end it here. Let's go back maybe halfway, and let's maybe bring our Y down a little bit. And I'm just going to copy this keyframe and paste it on the starting point here. That way I can see how I'm doing, and then I'm just going to bring these all to 0. Okay, so it should go from here and up. Maybe that's a little too thick. Let's bring that down a little. Okay, I'm going to easy ease all these. So it should look like this. And add motion blur. Ooh, we didn't add motion blur on these either. Okay, cool, right? All right. Let's kind of offset our home button stuff too, just kind of sequence all of these. That way they can all look nice and cool. Just to start this sequence. So what does that look like so far? Let's step back a little. Replay this. Okay, looks good. Let's add like a camera and stuff at the top. So really what we can do is we can steal our button here, duplicate that, rename that camera. Oops, rename that camera. And let's just bring it up top. You know, we already have the animation complete, right? Bring this to like the corner maybe. Is that where a camera is? I don't even know. Let's bring this up here. Oh, we didn't rename this. This is our speaker. Our camera will slide down just so in time, so it's adds with the sequence here. Okay, so that's pretty crazy. Let's hit U and look at our keyframes. It's pretty big for our final one. Let's bring our scale down. You know, maybe that's a good size. So rather than going at such a huge 184, let's bring that to like 108, because it ends now at 69. So okay, that looks good. And let's just do let's do a couple more of these. So let's duplicate that. I'm gonna bring it over in time again, a couple more frames, and let's do these over here on the left side. Oops, you gotta be careful where you're clicking with all this stuff. I'll zoom in here. Slide it like over here so there's like some circles. I'm gonna even make this smaller so it kind of lines up with how big the speaker bar is. And this ends at 40%. So let's overshoot it by like, I don't know, what's 60 look like? Okay, that looks good. So we're overshooting, we're going to 60 and then down to 40. And let's do this. Let's start this over here. Let's duplicate it. Come over, duplicate it. Come over. Okay, this is what my awesome next gen phone looks like. And then we'll slide these in time so they're all sequenced. So that's now what that looks like. And it's a little slow. It looked good when it was down here because it was a lot bigger and it takes a little bit longer to get those distances, but with this being so much slower, let's select them all and let's just bring these in so they're a little bit faster. Cool, looks good. Okay, I like it. So let's get out of here. We got our awesome next gen phone that we custom built. Let's see how this looks. Let's watch the whole thing. Okay, cool. Looks good. So now we have some explody lines we need to get in there. We'll add those elements towards the end. We want this whole phone now to go over to the right a little bit and then slide left. So to do that, we need to make sure that all of our elements, so we'll select all of them, and then we can just pick whip to the phone base here to make sure they're all parented. Because once these all come in, about that point right here, we want this to slide over. So now that they're all parented, we can just do a position move on our phone base. We'll go ahead like 10 frames. We'll slide this over a little bit to the right. And then we'll go ahead like 20 frames. And we'll frame this on the left side of the frame. Okay, and we'll easy ease all that stuff. So let's bring this over here just so we can loop that and see what that speed looks like. Oh, that looks funky on here. I'm not sure why. I think it's just I don't know if it's my monitor or what, but it takes too slow. Let's make this faster. Okay, that looks good. Okay, that looks good. And then we can do we'll finish out our lines and our text really quick, and then we'll go add our little Explody lines. So we got all our movement in. Let's do our trim path lines. So we'll use our pen tool, and we'll just do a straight up line here. We're gonna click once, hold shift, and then left click and let go. That'll create a perfectly straight line. We don't want it to be orange. We want it to be white. We don't want to fill on it. We just want to stroke. So let's click fill and take that off. And let's dive in here and go to our settings. So our shape 1, this is going to be title line top. Go to our stroke, and let's add, using this plus sign, we can add our little dots to it, right? And I think it's just too wide right now, so we'll bring that down to like 11. Okay, cool, we got our dots. Now we just need to animate it, right? So let's find the point in time that needs to come in. It slides over here. So about here, we want it to animate. So I'm going to select our title top line. I'm going to hit left bracket because that's where I want it to start. And we're going to animate that in using our trim paths. So let's hit add and trim paths. And this is the tool that allows us to animate these points animating out to kind of make this. So we're going to animate the end. So we have our start at 0 and our end at 100, which is, this is our start. So that's at 0. Our end's over here at 100. So if we animate our end, we can bring our end to 0 and animate that out to 100. That'll bring this whole line out. So that's what we'll do. We'll do end. We'll start this at 0. And we'll go ahead a few frames and we'll bring it out to 100. And we'll easy ease it. And you should see that animate out. Perfect. And we'll add motion blur. So if we look at our point, okay, looks good. Awesome. So rather than going through and making it from scratch again, the easiest thing probably to do would just be to take this, duplicate it, rename this bottom, rotate it 180 degrees, and just reline it up with the bottom. That's probably the easiest way. That way we don't have to worry about making sure that it's, I can't click and drag for some reason. Let's bring this guy over. Sweet, looks good. Now we can offset these, click and drag this over just a few keyframes. So my top one's gonna start first. Yeah, looks good. Again, when things happen in perfect succession, they start and stop at the exact same time. It just looks too fake. Nothing in life starts at exactly the same exact time. So, okay, we got that. Now we'll do our text. New text. Matt's awesome phone. Change it to white. We'll make it bigger. Spread it out a little bit better than that. We'll line it up. Again, this isn't going to be exactly how it appears in the homework, but you get the idea. So this is our ending point. We're going to bring this text layer over, because just looking, these are where our titles come in. So we'll just stagger it right after that. So I'll hit the left bracket to slide it over, and we will go to our text animator from week 2, and we want to animate the position. So this is our ending position. We want to adjust our starting position to be just off screen here. Okay, we'll arrow down our range selector, advanced. We want our to be based on lines because we want it to come in line by line. And we'll animate our offset. So offset, go ahead like 30 keyframes, bring that to 100. So it's word by word by word. Looks awesome. Let's add some ease low, maybe like 70% to smooth that motion out. Maybe make this a little slower. And let's add some motion blur. Let's see what that looks like. Cool. Looks good. Okay, so the last thing we need to do are those little explody lines. Okay, so let's bring up our title action safe. You can click right here. That'll bring up our like action safe grid. So it gives us, this is dead center in the screen, this little crosshair. And I'm gonna hide everything. So I'm gonna click and drag down, hide everything. So we can just focus on a blank slate here. Creating these little exploded lines can be kind of annoying. It's very important to, the easiest way that I found is to build them using this dead center point. So if we kind of zoom in here, you can click and let go as our starting point. We're using our pen tool. And click and let go there, and then just come up, hold shift, and click up here to kind of create your line, right? So we got our line. Our stroke is pretty huge, so we're going to bring that down. Okay, so we got just a small basic line from here up. So we need to animate this. Let's just go back to the beginning. We'll just animate this from here and then move it later. The way that we animate these using trim paths is animating both the start and the end because we want it to kind of explode out, like spark out kind of. So if we were going to do it as just the end, we would go the end from 0 to 100. Okay, so our end comes out. But once our end starts to come out like this, we want our beginning to kind of follow it up from behind. So as this starts, maybe here, we want our start to also start animating through. So from 0, we want them to end together at 100%. So as it comes through, it kind of looks like a little spark that shoots out, right? See that? Let me turn on motion blur here, and I'm going to ease these. See what that looks like. Okay, cool. Looks good. If you have this too close together, you're not going to let the start begin to animate towards the end long enough before you see the line. For instance, this is what it would look like. See how it's so small? It's because we're not giving enough time here. If we give it more time before our ending point starts its animation, you'll have a nice longer line. Okay, that's almost too long, so I'm going to bring this more closer so it's, yeah, that looks good. Okay. And I think, honestly, if these are regular linear keyframes, you can change those back by control left clicking. I don't necessarily want it to slow down at the end. I kind of just want it to keep firing off. So I'm actually not going to make these. I don't want this to slow down and come to an end. I just want them to keep going straight off before they disappear. Okay, cool. Now we need to use our repeater operand, excuse me, to duplicate that. So we'll go to add repeater. Repeater asks us how many copies we want to make. We'll do 3. And by default, it shifts our position for each one. So if we open this up, you can see that now there's 3 of these. And the reason they're shift to the right is because it's saying between every copy, we want to it's shifting our position 100 pixels. That's just a default thing. So if we make this 0 and we do rotation instead, between every copy we're rotating, you know, let's do maybe 30 degrees. Okay, looks good. It's actually kind of slow. I'm going to speed this up. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so cool. Now we have our element. Looks good. So now we can place this where it needs to go. We could hit R and we can rotate it however we want it to be rotated. So let's go through our animation. Let's bring these back and go through our animation. We want it to go right when it flips right here before it starts the rotation. So boom. So let's grab this. We'll name this explosion 1. And let's drag this right as it happens. So about there. And we kind of want to place this guy over on the edge. Maybe towards the corner here. And we'll rotate it so it's going down to the left. And we'll do another one where, so if this is negative 150, let's add plus 180 degrees. Oops. So it's the exact opposite, essentially. Let's bring this to this side. Okay, so should do that, essentially. That looks pretty awesome. Okay, so let's step back. Let's play that full speed. Cool, looks good. So the other thing, we know that at this point, they're gone. They've disappeared. We can take these guys, and if you hit Alt right bracket, it'll trim the rest of this so it's gone. So we know that this is where our explosion happens, right here, right? Cool, looks good. Okay, so let's go to the point where it does its little move, because we want another one down here. So it shifts to the right, and before it kicks back, let's duplicate this. Bring this guy over here. And we'll bring it down the corner. Right? It's because we want it to go, oh, maybe a little too early there. So we want it to happen about there. Maybe slide this a little bit later. Cool. That looks good. Okay, so let's take off our grid. We don't need that anymore. So let's watch this in its entirety. I think we're done. Sweet. That's it, man. We did it. That's the homework. Again, for cooler animations, this sequential stuff where it kind of starts a few frames after the element before, I really like that stuff. You could either also stagger these a little bit too if we wanted to, so they're not starting at exactly the same time. That type of stuff's really cool. I like that a lot, especially when you get a bunch of elements in there. The easiest way to add complexity is just to, if they're all doing the exact same thing, just to stagger them by a few frames. It makes it look really nice. So hopefully this helps. Hopefully this is still recording. I should have checked that, but I'll think about probably making another video for some of the stuff this week that we talked about, just because I know we have more people watching this online stuff. So hopefully this helps, and we'll see you guys in class next